Another thing we know about birth at the TBC is for people who do need to transport to the hospital, the greatest chance of that happening is during the labor before the baby is born. There is some chance that either the baby or the person who's just given birth may need to leave for the hospital after the birth, but those are low chances. So I want to share with you some numbers about that for those people who that's interesting for. For people giving birth at the first time at the birth center in the last 5 years, people who needed to leave for the hospital during labor were about 34% of people. And 30% of them went by private vehicle, so almost nobody needed to use an ambulance. For people having a baby for the first time, the chance of needing to transport for the person who had given birth in the immediate time after the birth or postpartum is 3.5%. And more than half of those are by ambulance. And then the chance of the baby needing to go to the hospital after the birth is about 3% in total, about half who could go in a private vehicle and half of the babies needed an ambulance. The most common reasons for needing to leave the TBC and go to the hospital when you're giving birth for the first time are slow labor, like I spoke about before, or sometimes the passage of meconium by the baby into the waters or amniotic fluid. So that's the baby's first poop. You can talk to your midwives more about when that might happen, but hospital birth is usually recommended for that. The most common reasons of needing to go by ambulance to the hospital during labor are if the baby's heart rate becomes abnormal. People who need to leave for the hospital in the postpartum period or just after giving birth, the most common reason to go by a private vehicle would be having a tear or a laceration to the birth canal or vulva or vagina that is outside of the midwife's scope to repair. And the most common reason to go by ambulance would be for too much bleeding or a postpartum hemorrhage. And then finally, for people giving birth for the first time, the most common reason for a baby to need to go to the hospital would be being smaller than expected for the gestational age or not having enough antibiotics in labor to fight against group B streptococcus or GBS, which is another thing you can talk with your midwives about. The most common reason for needing to leave by ambulance was difficulty breathing or some degree of resuscitation needed.